Hi, I'm Bill Perkins. Welcome to Compass TV. Compass is a nonprofit ministry that defends the accuracy of the Bible from Genesis 1 to Revelation 22. So if you love the Lord, love your Bible, and love to learn, you're going to love this video presentation. Abby Johnson was a Planned Parenthood clinic director who oversaw some 24,000 abortions in Texas. She had bought into the liberal lie that it's only a fetus. But all that changed when Abby was asked to assist with an ultrasound-guided abortion, and she discovered the horrifying facts of what really goes on during abortion. She quit her job and began spreading the truth about what goes on during an abortive procedure. Not long after this presentation was recorded, a movie was made about Abby Johnson titled Unplanned. It's uncomfortable to learn about all this, but certainly worth knowing. Inside an Abortion Clinic by Abby Johnson.
Well, I am from Texas, so howdy. It is good to be here with all of you today. I do live in Austin, Texas, and with my husband, Doug, and we have 7 children. I know. I tell people we became pro-life and we couldn't stop breeding. So I'm actually a natural family planning instructor. I hear it works if you use it. Clearly, we wouldn't know. I have no more clients. Nobody trusts me anymore. So anyway, we have an 11-year-old daughter, and we have 4 boys that are 5, 4, 3, and 2. Just wait. And then we have 9-month-old twin baby girls. So, yep. So, God is funny like that. I said, well, maybe we'll have one more and we'll round it out at 6. And God said, nope. Here's 2. So, anyway, it's been really a blessing. My first 2 boys are, they are about 11 months apart. My second 2 boys are 14 months apart. My last 2 boys are 6 months apart. And I am fast, but I'm not quite that fast. Our youngest son was actually gifted to us through open adoption. So, funny story. I was speaking for a pregnancy center in Atlanta, Georgia, and I looked down on my phone. I saw a notification pop up, and it was from a group that I'm in on Facebook of about 30 women. We're all really close friends. And this woman in the group was talking about this woman that she interpreted for. My friend is a sign language interpreter for the deaf community in her church. And so she interpreted for this woman and became friends with her and found out that this woman was pregnant with her 4th child. She was married. She had 3 other children. But this 4th child had actually not been conceived with her husband. She had actually been the victim of an assault. And so she chose an adoption plan. And 2 weeks before her due date, she got an email from the expected adoptive parents, and they said, we've decided that since there's a possibility that your child could be deaf, we don't want him. Because, you always know what you're going to get when you have your own biological children. Then another family was contacted, potential adoptive family, and they asked, well, how black is the dad? The baby was biracial, and they were a white family that wanted a white baby that looked like them. And so my friend posts in this group about the situation. She's asking for prayers, and she says, and by the way, if anyone knows anyone who would be interested in adopting this baby, let me know. He's coming in 2 weeks. And I saw this pop up on my phone, and I looked at it, and I don't know why I did it, but I said, we will. And so my friend immediately called me, and she said, are you crazy? Because Carter, at the time, he was only 6 months old. And I said, well, sure. I mean, we have so many babies in our house right now. Adding another one into the mix is really not a big deal. I haven't slept in like 4 years. So she said, okay, well, I'm going to let the mother know, this expectant mother know. And I said, great, do that. So I hung up the phone and I thought, I should talk to my husband. And what I really thought was, can I send this to him in a text? But I thought better. I thought I should call him. So I called him, and he was sort of mad. I don't know if mad's the right word. He was more panicky because, see, my husband is actually a stay-at-home dad. So this really affects him more than me, actually. So he didn't talk to me for a couple days, and then he finally called me, and he said, I've been thinking about it, and he said, I've written a pros and cons list. And he said, every time I think of a reason that this is crazy, that we absolutely should not do this, he said, I look into our future, and that little boy is always there. And he said, I think we should go ahead and do it. And I said, honey, I am so glad you said that, because the lady doing our home study is coming tomorrow. So that would have been awkward if it was a no. So 2 weeks later, our son was born, and we went up to meet him and to meet his mother, and we were trying to decide on a name for this baby, and we like to name our kids. We like to give them a family name, and we like to give them a biblical name. And so we were, trying to think of something. We knew we wanted to name him a name that started with the letter J, because the birth mother's name, her name starts with J, and her 3 other children, their names start with J. So we wanted to honor her in that way. And so, I went online to BibleNames.com or something, and clicked on J and started, looking down the list, and nothing was really jumping out to me. And I got to the bottom, and I saw the name Jude. Now, in the Catholic faith, Jude is the patron saint of desperate or impossible cases. And I thought about that, and I thought, you know what? This is the perfect name for this little boy. Because there had to be times when his mother looked at her situation and said, this is impossible. When she found out she was pregnant, she went to some of her friends, she went to some of her family, she went to people in her church, and they looked at her and said, well, this is the one time that abortion is acceptable. This is the exception, right? Look at our laws. How many laws do we have in place, pro-life laws, that are protecting the unborn, except in cases of rape? It's the exception. And she very courageously looked back at them and said, it's either a baby all the time or it's a baby none of the time. But there had to be times where she felt like she was up against an impossible task. Rejection of her innocent child over and over again. First, because of how he was conceived. Then again, because of a possible hearing deficit that he doesn't have, by the way. And then again, because of the color of his skin. There had to be times when she felt like she was up against an impossible task. But every day, she continued to choose life for that baby. Every day, she continued to give God her yes. Now, I think about Jude. I think about truly what a miracle it is that he is with us. But if I'm honest with you, when I look at the abortion rate in our country, 1 in 3 women having abortions before the age of 45, 3,000 abortions taking place every day in the United States. Over 1 million abortions taking place annually in our country. When I look at those statistics, I understand that truly any child that is born in our society today is a miracle. Now, I would love to tell you I've always stood up here and defended life, but you know that's not true. I worked for Planned Parenthood, our country's largest abortion provider, for 8 years of my life. I got involved with Planned Parenthood as a college kid. I grew up in a Christian home, grew up in an amazing home. I have the best parents. They've been married for 41 years. I grew up in church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday night, youth choir, youth camp, youth group. I knew the Lord. I loved the Lord. But when I went to college, I started falling away from him, like so many young people today. I remember growing up, I remember saying in high school that I was a pro-life person. But abortion, being pro-life, that was not something that we sat around the dinner table and discussed in my family. I did not know the ins and outs of the pro-life movement or the pro-choice movement or the abortion debate. If you would have put me up against someone in a debate who was pro-choice, I would have lost. See, being pro-life was something that we said, but it wasn't how we lived. So when I went to college, I met a woman who was with Planned Parenthood, and she was trying to recruit volunteers and maybe patients and potentially staff. And she asked me what I knew about the organization Planned Parenthood, and honestly, I knew nothing. I don't think that I had ever even heard the phrase Planned Parenthood in all of my life. So she began talking to me about Planned Parenthood and giving me those media talking points that they say over and over again. She told me that without Planned Parenthood, low-income women would have absolutely nowhere else to go for health care. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I do not know the plight of a low-income woman who is underinsured or uninsured. I have always been very blessed to have health care available to me when I needed it. So when she told me this, I didn't have any frame of reference to say that's not true. But it wasn't true. You see, in the United States, there are fewer than 700 Planned Parenthood facilities nationwide. There are over 13,000 federally qualified health centers that provide comprehensive health care for men, women, and children. That 13,000 doesn't include the over 2,000, more than 2,000 pregnancy medical centers that are able to provide medical care to women. It also doesn't include hospital health systems, rural public health systems, and county health departments. It also doesn't include the tens of thousands of private and group physician practices that accept government subsidy programs like Medicaid. So we're talking about tens of thousands of providers compared to fewer than 700 Planned Parenthood clinics, but Planned Parenthood is the only place women can go. You see, it's a lie, but they've said it so much that people believe it is true. That's what happens to a lie. If you say a lie enough, and particularly if you say it with authority and confidence, people believe it is true. She asked me what I thought about abortion, and I said, well, you know, I grew up pro-life. And she said, that's great. Pro-lifers are good people. She said, you know, they're just a little misguided. Sorry about that. Sorry to let you know. She said they just don't see the big picture. They don't understand that without access to safe and legal abortion, women are going to be forced to go where? The back alleys, right? Oh, my gosh. These women, we're just going to have women just falling all over the streets, just dying from these back alley abortion procedures. You know, and these pro-lifers, they want to take away our rights to do with our bodies what we will, and then what right are they going to go after next? Then they're going to tell us that, you know, women can't vote. And then what? You know, then they're going to tell us, women, you're not allowed to wear pants. And I thought, Well, I like pants. So I signed up immediately. And I tell people it is what I didn't know. That's what led me in the doors of the abortion industry. And I submit to you today, it is what women in our society do not know. That's what leads them in the doors. It's what they do not know about their bodies. It's what they do not know about their fertility. It's what they do not know about their unborn child. It's what they do not know about the abortion industry. And friends, it's what they do not know about Jesus Christ. That's what leads them into the doors of these clinics. And people ask me all the time, they say, Abby, how is it that, you went from being this good kid, this good Christian kid? I was a pretty good kid. I didn't do very many things wrong that my parents found out about. How is it that you went from being that kid to being someone who ran an abortion clinic? How is it that you went from being that person to being someone who laid on an abortion clinic table, not once, but twice, to take the lives of my own children by abortion? Abby, how did that happen? And I don't really have just a silver bullet type of answer for you today, except to say that it happened just a little bit at a time. Because that's the way that sin works in our lives. It's just one little lie at a time, one little justification at a time. When I left Planned Parenthood, I realized that if you have to justify your beliefs, then you're probably believing the wrong things. Because God's word is always true and requires no justification. I left Planned Parenthood in 2009. 2009 had been an interesting year for me. In April of that year, I was named Planned Parenthood's Employee of the Year. You can hold your applause. I know you're all very proud of me. But I was pretty proud of myself. I was really excited because that meant, because I received that award, that meant that I got to attend Planned Parenthood's national convention, their national gala that they have every year. They have about 4,000 people there. They raise something about $10 million for Planned Parenthood in that night. And they always give out awards at this gala. And Planned Parenthood's most honored award, their most distinguished award that they give out every year, is called the Margaret Sanger Circle Award. Now, do we know who Margaret Sanger is? Okay, well, for those of you that don't, like nobody, Margaret Sanger, she was the founder of Planned Parenthood. First Planned Parenthood founded in 1916 in New York. At that time, it was called the American Birth Control League. It then later was renamed to Planned Parenthood. Margaret Sanger was a eugenist. She said things like, the most merciful thing a large family can do to one of its infant members is to kill it. She also said that Negroes were human weeds which needed to be exterminated from the human garden. Let me be clear with you today, and I want you to hear me when I'm saying this. Planned Parenthood was founded for one reason and one reason alone. And that was to eradicate our society of African Americans. Currently, in the United States, we are seeing Margaret Sanger's dreams coming to fruition. As currently, there are almost as many African American babies being aborted as there are being born. In some states, the abortion rate in the African American community is as high as 70%. This is happening today, on our watch. And every year, Planned Parenthood continues to celebrate its racist roots by giving out an award in the name of their founder, Margaret Sanger. And nobody says a word about it. Can you imagine? I heard one time, it was on Wikipedia, so I think it's true. No, I'm kidding. I don't know if you know this, but Adolf Hitler was actually involved in the creation of Volkswagen. Okay? That is true. And can you imagine if every year Volkswagen gave out their top salesman award and called it the Adolf Hitler Award? Like, people would be running their Volkswagens off of cliffs. They'd be burning them in the public square. People would have nothing to do with Volkswagen anymore, right? It would immediately go under. There would be no more sales of Volkswagen cars. But every year, Margaret Sanger is honored, a woman who actually worked and was admired by Adolf Hitler. She is celebrated. And not only does Planned Parenthood continue to be celebrated, they receive more than $500 million of our tax money. In 2009, I was excited to win that award, because the Employee of the Year award, because that meant I got to sit at the head table with the person that was receiving the Margaret Sanger Circle Award. And that year, the person who received it was Hillary Clinton. Now, I know you're all fans. Keep it down. And I got to have dinner with her, and we had a very intimate dinner, me, Hillary, and 10 Secret Servicemen. And I sat there with her, and I watched her go up to the podium and receive her award. And I don't remember what she said. I'm sure it was riveting. But I remember thinking during that time, I have made it. Look at me. It's never going to get better than this right here, right now. That was in April of 2009. In August of 2009, I had an interesting meeting, budget meeting with my supervisor. Our fiscal year started September 1 every year, and so we were going over our budgets, and we were looking at the upcoming fiscal year budget. And I noticed that there was an error on my upcoming budget. I knew that we had an abortion quota, a certain number of abortions that we had to sell to patients every month in order to meet our budget. But I looked at the budget, and I noticed that in my upcoming fiscal year, they had actually doubled the abortion quota. And I thought, oh, that's a mistake. That can't be right? Because here at Planned Parenthood, we're about reducing the number of abortions, right? That's what I said. That's what I said to the media. We're not about selling abortion. That's ridiculous. But here it was in black and white. So I brought it up to my supervisor and said, I'm sorry, there must be a mistake here. And she looked at me, and she started laughing. And she said, Abby, why would we want to reduce the abortion numbers? That's how we make our money. Now, I'm not really sure how I rationalized that conversation in my head, but somehow I did. And about a month later, we had a visiting physician come in from out of town. And he was explaining to me that he performed abortions differently than we did at Planned Parenthood. Now, let me just sort of explain the way that Planned Parenthood operates. So you have all of these clinics. You have under 700 Planned Parenthood clinics, and they all report to affiliates. And those are sort of their main offices. And there's about 70 affiliates across the country, and those affiliates operate the clinics. And then those affiliates report to the national office, which is Planned Parenthood Federation of America. And the national office, they have physicians there that are on contract with them. And these physicians set up protocols or standard of care for how things are supposed to operate or be carried out inside of all of the clinics. So what that means is that if you walked into a Planned Parenthood for an abortion in Tampa, Florida, it would be performed in the same way that an abortion in St. Louis, Missouri. Okay, because the protocols are all the same. And I had only worked at Planned Parenthood, so I only knew their protocol. But this doctor was explaining to me that it's actually safer for the patient if the doctor can see what he's doing while he's performing surgery on someone. that made sense to me. I don't think any of us are ready to sign up for a blindfolded root canal or a blindfolded colonoscopy or anything like that, right? We want the doctor to be able to see what he's doing while he's caring for us. But inside of Planned Parenthood, that was not our protocol. Let me just sort of explain the way that abortion takes place inside of a Planned Parenthood. And this is the general standard for abortion across the country. A woman comes in, we get her on the table, the exam table. Now, as soon as we get her on the table, we sedate her. Now, why do we do that? We do it for 3 reasons. One, because the medication that we give her, the conscious sedation, is a combination of fentanyl and Versed. Versed gives you an amnesic effect. So you won't remember what took place in the room. You won't remember the smells or the sounds or what you heard. The other reason, number 2, is because the doctor doesn't want to talk to the patient. Okay, so let me be clear. Physicians, you hear all the time, abortion should be a decision made between a woman and her doctor, right? You've heard that? Well, let me tell you something. The doctors never talk to the patients. Most of the time, the women who came into our clinic didn't even know the name of the doctor because we didn't want the patient to be able to find him later if there was a complication. So she's not even given the name of her physician most of the time, much less given an opportunity to discuss risks or the procedure with him. And so in order to keep the women silent and to get them to shut up, we would go ahead and give that sedation immediately before the doctor came in. And the third reason was because an ultrasound is always performed before the abortion takes place. That is standard protocol inside the abortion clinic, that an ultrasound is performed. Now, we only did that for one reason, and that was to determine how far along the woman was in her pregnancy so that we would know how much to charge her for the abortion. But as soon as we got the dates, then the ultrasound was rolled away. Now, we sedated her because we didn't want to take a chance that she would pop her head up and see what was on that ultrasound monitor. Because you see, the ultrasound exposes the lie of the abortion industry, that there is an individual human being in the womb with a beating heart. But that's a budget killer for the abortion industry. So the ultrasound was rolled away. The doctor would then come in, and he would begin the abortion procedure by artificially dilating the woman's cervix. So what naturally happens during childbirth, he does artificially with metal dilation rods. After the cervix is dilated enough, he will insert a tube called a cannula. And that tube is hooked up to the suction machine. And he will take that cannula and he will insert it into the uterus and just blindly poke around in the woman's uterus until he thinks he has enough blood and tissue in a glass jar. That glass jar goes into a lab called the POC lab. Now, POC stands for products of conception. What is the product of conception? The baby, right? We can't say baby inside of an abortion clinic. So we said POC or POC, or if the staff was feeling funny, they would say that it stood for parts of children. And inside that POC lab, there is a POC lab technician. And her job is to take everything that was suctioned out of the uterus, dump it into a glass baking dish, and reassemble the parts of the baby. Now, why did we do that? Because if we left a foot or part of the spine or the head or a hand inside of the woman's uterus, she could develop a very serious infection that could be fatal for her. Now, please understand, I think I talk about parts of babies and people think, oh, she must be talking about late-term abortions. No. Please understand, I'm talking about first trimester abortions, when the overwhelming majority of abortions are taking place in this country. After all of the parts have been accounted for, the POC technician will dump everything into a red biohazard Ziploc sort of bag, and those bags go into a freezer that the staff jokingly called the nursery. And once a week, a biohazard medical waste company like Stericycle would come into the facility, and they pick up the red bags of babies and they take them to their facility where they are incinerated. And that's how abortion takes place day in, day out, every day, 3,000 times a day. That was the only way I knew abortion to be performed. But this doctor told me that he actually uses an ultrasound during the entire procedure. And that lessened the risks of things like uterine perforation, poking a hole right through the woman's uterus, which happened all the time because the doctor literally can't see what he's doing. So I went to my same supervisor and I said, look, if this is safest for women, then why isn't this the standard of care inside of our clinics? And she said, well, it is safer for women. But she said, using an ultrasound during the abortion takes about an extra 3 minutes of time. Now, our goal inside of Planned Parenthood was to have a woman on the table, off the table, abortion complete in 5 minutes. And we were trying to do anywhere between 40 and 60 abortions a day. So we simply didn't have enough time to insert 3 extra minutes per patient. So I accepted that answer, but this doctor told me that if time presented and the right patient presented, he would show me what this type of abortion procedure looked like. That day did come, and I was asked to assist in the abortion procedure. My job was to hold the ultrasound probe in place on the woman's abdomen so that the doctor would be able to, in his words, visualize his target. We did the measurement. We found that the woman was 13 weeks along in her pregnancy. Now, at 13 weeks, are there arms and legs? Yes. Fingers and toes? Yep. Heartbeat? Brain waves? Internal organs? Yep. Everything is there. Everything is formed. Outside of the womb, the baby's about this big, and we can even tell if it's a boy or a girl. Now, admittedly, I stood there looking at the screen, feeling apprehensive, not knowing what I was about to see, because I recognized that this really did look like a baby. Now, I knew it wasn't because Planned Parenthood told me so. Now, let me just tell you a little about pro-choice science. Abortion science. Okay, now I was pregnant with my daughter Grace when I worked inside of Planned Parenthood. When I was pregnant with Grace, she was a baby. Because abortion science says that a pregnancy is a baby if that pregnancy is wanted, but if the pregnancy is unwanted, then it is simply tissue or something to be discarded. When I was pregnant with Grace at about 30 weeks, my coworkers at Planned Parenthood threw me a baby shower. Not a fetus shower. It was called a baby shower. They held it for me on a Saturday after a long day of performing abortions. I stood there looking at the screen, and I knew no matter what I saw, I knew that this fetus, baby, POC, whatever you wanted to call it, was not going to feel anything. Now, how did I know that? Well, because Planned Parenthood sent me a memo about it. The most frequently asked question we got from women having an abortion procedure was, will my baby feel this? And we knew that we had to have an answer to give to them that would not deter them from their abortion decision. So our scripted answer, the answer that I gave back thousands of times, was no, the fetus has no sensory development or does not feel anything for 28 weeks. I knew that was a lie. And these women, I'd give them that answer. They knew it was a lie too. We all knew it was a lie. 60% of women who have abortions already have children at home. These are not women who are ignorant of prenatal development or prenatal care. Women aren't having abortions because they don't think it's a baby. Those days are gone. Women are having abortions today because our society has convinced them that if you are not at the ideal situation, the ideal time in your life to have a baby, then the best thing, the most sacrificial thing you can do for that baby is to kill it. And that's, if I'm honest with you, that's really why the culture of death exists today in our society. Because we are terrified of suffering. Why does physician-assisted suicide exist? Because we don't want people to suffer with a terminal illness. Why does abortion exist? Well, we don't want a baby to have to suffer with an unfit mom. We don't want a mother to have to suffer through an unwanted pregnancy. We have forgotten, even in our Christian beliefs, we have forgotten that we are promised that there will be times of suffering. And that we are to suffer with joy. That we are to take our sufferings and we are to nail them to the sufferings of Christ on the cross. There will be times of suffering. But instead of suffering, we choose to kill. I stood there looking at the ultrasound monitor, and I could see the cannula, that suction tube. The suction wasn't yet turned on. I could see it going into the woman's womb. And I watched as it got closer and closer to that baby. When it finally touched his side, he jumped. And he began flailing his arms and legs as if he was trying to move away from the abortion instrument. But there was nowhere for him to go. You see, God created the space in the womb so perfectly. There's just enough room for that baby to grow and thrive. And that baby, he had no fighting chance against those instruments that day. But I can tell you that he did fight. When the doctor had the instruments in the right position, he said to the technician, "Beam me up, Scotty." And the suction was turned on. And I think people make the assumption that what I saw next was the worst part, that seeing a child become dismembered in his mother's womb would be the worst part. And that was bad, but I knew that was going to happen. That wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that when I had the opportunity to intervene, when I had the opportunity to step in and save the life of a defenseless, innocent child, I just stood there. I did nothing. I mean, I remember wanting to sit this woman up and to say, look what's happening to your baby. Make them stop. But I didn't. I just stood there and I watched. In just a few seconds, the ultrasound screen was black. And I knew that that meant the abortion had been successful. And I walked out of the procedure room that day and I went to my office. I didn't know what to think. I didn't want to believe what I had just seen. I didn't want to believe that I had somehow fallen for this lie, for so long, for 8 years. But I couldn't deny it. I could not deny what I had just seen. For the entire 8 years that I worked at Planned Parenthood, there were people standing outside of my abortion facility. They were not there to protest. They were not there to picket. They were there to pray. And I knew that they were primarily praying for the women going in, making abortion decisions, but I knew they were also praying for us, for the workers. They had always told me that they were. And I was sitting in the office that day, and I was looking out my window, and I saw these two women standing out there that were with this pro-life group, and they were praying. And so I began to pray, really for the first time in 8 years. And I began asking God, what do you want me to do? Who do I go to? I don't know who to go to right now. Where do you want me to go? And I felt like God was telling me to go to these people, to these pro-life people, this pro-life group. And I thought, no, give me somebody else, like anybody else. But I felt like that was where I needed to go. So I got in my car, I ran out the back door, and I could have walked to their office because it was conveniently located next door, but I thought that would look suspicious, so I got in my car and drove the 50 yards. And I pulled in their parking lot, and I walked in their back door, and I sat on their couch, and I just wept. I didn't know what to say. So what do you say? I'm sorry? That didn't seem like enough. I didn't know what to say, but as I sat there on that couch, I began counting. I began counting the years and the days and the abortions. And I realized that in my 8 years at Planned Parenthood, I have been responsible for over 20,000 abortions. And how do you live with that? How do you live with that kind of burden? How do you move forward after hearing that number? But God, in his gentle and loving way, he reminded me as I sat on that couch that there was nothing I could ever do to make up for what I had done, but because of his scandalous and radical mercy, I didn't have to make up for anything. I decided I would go ahead and turn in my resignation, and not to worry, I gave him a good 5 minutes notice. And I told the pro-life group I was going to be leaving, and so they sent a young man out to the sidewalk named Bobby to be there, just to be sure that I was able to leave without incident. And I was walking out with my last load of stuff, and I waved to Bobby, and I told him that I would be by their office the next day, and he said okay. And so I got in my car, and I drove out of that parking lot for the last time, and I took a left. And I got to the stoplight, and I looked in my rearview mirror, and Bobby, he didn't know I could see him. He didn't know I was looking or anything, but I remember watching him. I could see him in my mirror. I watched him. He put his arms in the air, and he fell to his knees. Because there had to be times where they looked at me and they said, she is never leaving. God, why do you have us praying for this woman? She's mean to us. She mocks us. She mocks our faith. I was not the friendly abortion clinic director. There had to be times where they never thought I was going to leave that place. But then one day I did. You see, I am standing in front of you today as a testament to the power of conversion. No one is beyond the power of conversion because no one is beyond the power of Christ. And I'm going to tell you something. That has to be the focus. That has to be at the heart of the pro-life movement. Conversion. It cannot just be about saving a baby. Because if it's just about saving a baby, we lose. It has to be about conversion in the hearts and minds of those who are contemplating abortion. The hearts and minds of those who walk into the 2,700 pregnancy medical clinics across this country. Because if we just scare a woman out of having an abortion, then the next time she gets pregnant, she will be more likely to choose abortion that time. That's why 60% of women who have abortions are already mothers. It's easy to justify an abortion when you already have a child at home and you're struggling, right? It's about changing their life. It's about changing their heart. It's about helping their heart open to the message and the gospel of Christ. That's what changes their life. So it's about conversion for the mothers, but it's also about conversion for the fathers involved. See, I believe one of the primary antidotes to abortion is fatherhood. But we have a society of men, young men, who do not know how to be fathers because fatherhood has not been emulated for them in their lives. So they don't understand. They don't know the purpose of a father. They don't understand the God-given role that they have been given to be a protector, to be a provider. So they don't know. And in our society, secular feminism has emasculated men to the place where they feel like they have no voice. And it has to be for the conversion for those who work in the abortion industry. People like me. People who are not monsters. They're not reprobates. They're just sinners, like all of us. They just sin differently. But they are redeemable, and they are loved by their Creator. And God is just waiting for them to come to Him. How much joy and excitement must happen in heaven when a lost child returns to God. 2012, I thought there had to be other people out there, people like me, who were in the abortion industry but didn't want to be, that wanted to leave but didn't know where to go, just like me, just how I felt. And I looked around the pro-life movement, I realized there was no national organization actually reaching out to abortion clinic workers, reaching into the clinics and pulling these workers out. And so I thought, well, I can do that. I can start something like that. I had no idea what I was doing, but I started this organization called And Then There Were None. And we thought that if we had 10 workers leave a year, if we had 10 workers go through our ministry in a year, that would be overwhelming success. Because if I'm honest with you, it's sort of a hard sell. So 10 workers, that was our goal. Well, since we got started in June of 2012, we have had over 430 workers come through our ministry. And that is a success because of God. But one thing we didn't expect was that we would have abortion doctors calling us And we have assisted 7 full-time abortion providers put down their instruments of death and now advocate for life. That just shows us that no one is beyond the grace and the mercy of God. And, we talk about conversion. I think we also are looking for the conversion of those politicians around us who maybe do not believe as we do. Politicians make us mad. And then we get on Facebook and we get real mad and we post like graphics and memes and we say these things about them. What if we spent less time complaining about those that disagree with us and we spent more time on our knees in prayer praying for them? What would that look like? You see, my friends, we need a prayer revival in this country. That is what we are looking for. That is why you are here. God has placed you here for a purpose. And I know that you've heard about a lot of topics here today. I know that they've talked about the rapture, and I know that they've talked about other things. But let me tell you something. You know what you should do? You should be working every day to fight for those who have no voice. And you should be on your knees praying for a revival in this country. People come up to me and they go, well, I sure do pray for the end to abortion. And I go, oh, so what else are you doing? And they go, well, I pray. Okay, if you tell me that you are praying and that praying doesn't lead to action, then I'm going to question the sincerity of your prayer life. Because prayer should move us to act. Prayer should stir an urgency in our soul that we cannot let go of, that we must act. We must do something. We must fight. See, if you could see the things that I've seen, if you could see the little hand of an aborted baby in a dish, if you could see a baby fighting for his life to live, if you could see that, it would stir your spirit to a point where you would refuse to be apathetic. I know this isn't a pro-life conference, and I know there's a lot of you in here that probably say you are pro-life, and my question to you today is, what are you doing about it? Because we can debate over a lot of things. We can debate over the end times. We can debate over all kinds of things. But in the end, if our citizens do not have the basic right to life, those issues are secondary. I mean, that's what this is about, y'all. 3,000 babies a day. This is all of you times 6 every day in our society, dying in the name of choice. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you here. If you really want to change our culture from a culture of death to a culture of life, it's going to have to start at the pulpit. Pastors, You have been given the task of being a shepherd. Lead your flock. And people say to me, I don't know, Abby. I don't know. I don't want to offend anybody. Let me be clear with you. The other side of this debate, they don't care anything about offending you. In fact, they revel in offending you. It is time to speak up. It is time to be pro-life. It is time to be bold. This right here does not count as your pro-life activity for the year. This is easy. You're sitting in a padded chair. We're in the cool temperatures. You're at a gorgeous resort. This is not what it is to be pro-life. This is easy. Being pro-life is messy. It is about living the lives of these women, living with these women who are considering abortion. It's about doing everything you can to provide so that they will have a change of heart. It is messy. But that mess ends with a life. Now is the time. 70% of women having abortions are coming from our churches. 70% of women having abortions are coming from our churches. Growing up in a church, I heard really riveting sermons on the sin of homosexuality. I heard even more riveting sermons on the necessity of tithing. But abortion? Oh, no, we don't talk about that. Your silence is deafening to the women and men sitting in your churches who are in desperate need to feel the healing touch of God. It is hurting them. Our silence is hurting people. It's time to speak up. It's time to act, and it's not going to mean that you're always going to be the popular kid at the table. You will be persecuted for your beliefs. But God said when we are persecuted, we are what? Blessed. Be blessed in your persecution because you speak the truth of Christ. And guys, I'm just asking you to be better than me. You see, I hope that I have adequately presented this tragedy, our country's greatest tragedy. I hope that I have presented that well to you today. I have also given you a challenge to act, to intervene, to do something. Be better than me, because when I had the opportunity to act, to intervene, I stood there and did nothing. Don't let this opportunity pass you by today. People say, I don't know, Abby, I don't know if we're ever going to end abortion. You know, they've got Bill Gates and Bill Clinton and stacks of bills. But you know what? In the end, it really doesn't matter how much money they have. It doesn't matter who they have on their side. See, I'm not speaking to you today from a place in hopes of victory. I am speaking to you today from a place of victory because I know who wins this war in the end. But while we are battling here on earth, we must work to save every mother, child, and family that we can. In the end, we will win because we have the number one advocate on our side, and that is Jesus Christ. Thank you all so much, and God bless you.
This has been Inside an Abortion Clinic, presented by Abby Johnson. To receive a free catalog of hundreds of awesome Bible studies on DVD video, audio CD, or on a flash drive, information on upcoming Bible conferences, or details of our missionary outreach and trips to Israel, call Compass at 208-762-7777, 24 hours a day, or visit us on the web at compass.org. And be sure to like us on Facebook. Search facebook.com/compassbible.